Last year, Toyota finally decided to bring a hotter version of the Corolla to the States, the GR Corolla. It's got 300 horsepower, it's got a manual transmission, and it's got all-wheel drive. Unfortunately, that is not what this is. This is the 2023 Corolla hatchback XSE. It's been lightly refreshed for 2023, and I think is worth taking a closer look at. Up front, Toyota has ever so slightly tweaked the bottom corners of the bumper here. The grille remains otherwise the same. We just have these more chrome-like surrounds to the fog lights. On the XSE trim, we have these fog lights. They are LEDs, but on both trims, we have full LED headlights, turn signals, and DRLs. As you can see, the DRLs are much longer this time around, and they house the turn signals, which make them very long, very visible, very bright, very hard to miss in traffic. The Corolla hatchback is one of the few remaining vehicles in the United States marketed as a hatchback. Everything else has gone subcompact crossover. You've got still things like the Mini Cooper, the Nissan Leaf, the Mitsubishi Mirage, Kia Rio, Honda Civic, Subaru Impreza, and the upcoming Fiat 500e, which will be one of the smallest options in America, but also will be electric only. At 172 inches long with a 103.9-inch wheelbase, this is smaller than a Civic or a Mazda 3, but bigger than something like the Golf R or the GTI. These are the new wheel designs you get for the XSE trim for 2023. However, they're really not new designs, they just have a new finish. These are the same designs as last year's XSEs with a graphite finish now. They are 18 inches in size on XSE. You get a smaller 16-inch wheel design on the SE. These are wrapped in 225/40 Yokohama Avid GT tires. Not much, if anything at all, has really changed in the back of the Corolla hatchback. Down the bottom, the details of the bumper are slightly tweaked, but otherwise we still have the composite hatchback here. This makes it lighter weight and allowed them to carve it into this more intricate shape. We still have the rear wiper right here and full LED lights, though at first glance you might think right here is where the trunk release is. That's actually the backup camera. The trunk release is down here. In places like this where snow tends to fall and build up on bumpers, I actually do wish it wasn't here, but instead here among the logo. Standard on the 2023 Corolla hatchback is Toyota's Safety Sense 3.0 software. This is the latest version, which has a new feature called Proactive Driving Assist. What is that? Basically, in addition to the adaptive cruise control and the lane tracing and all of those active features, when it comes to around town driving, Proactive Driving Assist sort of implements those features by using radars and cameras to help more gently guide you around curves or keep you a safe distance from the car in front of you. It actually is noticeable in daily driving, and I quite like it. The rest of the system includes auto high beams, automatic emergency braking with pedestrian detection, lane departure warning with prevention, as well as lane tracing assist, adaptive cruise control, and road sign assist. The only other two options available are the blind spot monitor and rear cross traffic alert. If you want the Corolla hatchback body style, you have two powertrains to choose from. The fire-breathing 1.6-liter turbo 3-cylinder in the GR Corolla, which has 300 horsepower, all-wheel drive, a manual transmission. That is a separate car for a separate video. This is the regular 2-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder that makes 169 horsepower and is mated to front-wheel drive only and now a CVT only. However, the CVT does have a physical first gear, making around town driving feel more natural and traditional without all the unpredictability of a normal CVT. And if you want to know about fuel economy, that comes in at 35 miles per gallon combined for the base SE trim and 33 for this XSE, likely due to the added equipment and the larger wheels. If you want a hybrid Corolla, you're going to have to go with either the sedan or the upcoming Corolla Cross Hybrid. On the XSE trim, the driver does get a 10-way power adjustable seat. This does have lumbar support, but is only in and out. It is not up and down. And unfortunately, it doesn't have height adjustment on that side like it does over here. One thing to note is the Corolla has really good front visibility. They did carve out an extra space for glass in between the side mirror and the A-pillar, so you can see out of the corner that way and over that way, which is great, but there is no window for the C-pillar, or I guess beyond the C-pillar back there, so once you're looking in your blind spot, especially over your right shoulder, that is more visibly blocked. However, we do have a blind spot monitor on this trim, so that does make up for it. The back seat of the Corolla hatchback is less accommodating for tall people, especially those with long legs, because headroom-wise, it's really not too bad, but when you're looking at legroom, as you can see at 5'9", I have basically 0 inches of knee room left. Down lower, though, there is more wiggle room for your feet because there's some space under that front seat, but in general, this is not going to be the most comfortable back seat in a hatchback in America. We'll have to see how the upcoming Subaru Impreza improves on its last generation, but we know it's going to be a little bit more spacious than this, and we know the Honda Civic hatchback is definitely more spacious than this. This is going to feel more similar to the Mazda 3, though that car has even more of a sloping roofline to it and a dungeon-like feel because of this black headliner. So definitely sit in each one of those for yourself and make sure you find the right fit for you and your passengers. Two other things to point out back here. We have two USB-C charge ports right here in the center console. No air vents back here. I wasn't expecting that, but we have two map pockets, one behind the driver and one behind the front passenger seat. Once you do open up that lightweight tailgate, you will find that the load floor for the Corolla hatchback is rather high, at least higher than I was expecting, because my Veloster has more of a well to it. This is more of a shelf, but the shelf here does hide a spare tire. However, if you want 6 extra cubic feet of space in your Toyota Corolla hatchback, you can check the enhanced cargo package, which for free will delete the spare tire and lower your load floor for that extra space. That total number of just under 24 cubic feet of space is still not class leading, but this overall space provides a more versatile way to haul taller items or more awkwardly shaped items than you'd find in the sedan. If you want more cargo practicality, there is a Corolla Cross for you. It definitely has a more crossover, kind of station wagony shape, definitely more cargo space in total, and it offers all-wheel drive and a hybrid. Taking a quick trip around the interior, this is of course the top trim XSE. No sunroof is available. We do have a black headliner, which does give it a sportier vibe in here. Height adjustable seatbelt and height adjustable headrest, just as you'd expect. And now if you get an SE trim, these are going to be fully cloth seats. But here on the XSE trim, you get Softex, Toyota's go-to imitation leather material. Depending on the paint color you choose, you could get this mix of the light gray and the black, or you can go with all black. I would definitely pick the contrast here. I do like lighter color interiors, but do let us know, do you currently own a Toyota with Softex leather? Do you find it to be well worn over time? Does it hold up to the elements? Do blue jeans wipe off easily onto this white color? Do let us all know in the comments. I'm very curious. The door panel is a mixture of colors and materials. Up top we have the lighter color injection molded plastic design. This whole door panel in general has a less interesting look compared to what you'd find in a Hyundai Elantra or a Mazda 3, but where you make contact with the most is what matters the most, and that is going to be right here where the armrest is. These are nicely padded with that Softex finish and ample cushioning for my elbows, but your elbows certainly may vary. We do have mostly hard plastics all around here though. This is going to be a harder matte plastic, which is very durable. This element right here has a gloss finish, which will get fingerprints and scratches over time, unfortunately. And then down here we have a lack of branding for the upgraded JBL speaker, but this JBL system is much less hollow sounding than other JBL premium audio systems I've heard in recent Toyotas. So that is definitely an improvement over what I'm used to with Toyota, but it's still not going to be the same as something with a Bose branding to it. Then over to the dashboard, we have a simple and elegant layout that I think has aged quite nicely. It's very straightforward. We've got some stitching here, some stitching there that comes together to meet at the air vents over there. I think it's just a very clean, simple design, not too over the top and not too boring. The glove box is of average size, and while I don't have a tablet-sized computer, I do have a 14-inch MacBook that actually does fit in there once you take all of these other items out. Center stage here is still a good balance between analog and digital. All of your HVAC controls still remain down here. You've got buttons and knobs, so everything here is a physical button, which is nice. Here on the XSE trim, you have a dual automatic climate control. On the SE trim, it is only single zone, but it is still automatic. That separate readout is welcome, but is not novel in this segment. The main infotainment screen is also not super large for this segment. It remains 8 inches in size, but does have the brand's latest audio multimedia interface, which means you have wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, as well as Hey Toyota voice commands, a Wi-Fi hotspot, and a couple other things like that. My only thing is, this system takes a little longer than I'd like to boot up and connect to your phone, and sometimes it will easily lose connection to the phone, and that's a little bit disappointing. I hope with some software updates they do fix that. Otherwise, I actually find this user experience pleasing to the eye, and it has a certain level of Google-ness to it, which is no surprise given that you have Google search derived points of interest and tethered navigation, both of which are part of a subscription plan following a 1-year trial period. The Hey Toyota voice commands that were introduced with this software update are also included in that subscription and trial. There's also AT&T wireless hotspot capability, which has a 30-day or 3 GB trial that then is followed by a subscription. And if you want to remotely interact with your car via the Toyota app, that is another subscription. Moving on down to the console, Toyota does give you a Qi wireless charge pad. With my Google Pixel 6 Pro having its case on, it doesn't charge properly, but if you take the case off, it will definitely charge the phone, so big 6+ inch phones will fit. Toyota also keeps things classic back here, by having physical switches for your heated seats. So you can leave it in the low position and it will not pop out of that setting. So when you get back into a very freezing cold car, and as soon as you start it, this will be turned on, ready to go. Things remain simple and classic down this way with a robust shifter here that does pop over into a manual mode if you want to. You have your drive mode select toggle right there, and your traction control on and off switch right there. Down here we have two pretty large cup holders. This one's a little bit larger and has a more squared off bottom to it. That one definitely fits large cups. Then you have your button for the auto brake hold and the switch for the electronic parking brake. And finally you have your diminutive storage cubby under the armrest, which is nicely padded. But you do get extra brownie points for having a 12-volt socket right here and a USB-C charge only port right there. The steering wheel is the same design as we found when this car first debuted for the North American market. It isn't heated like you'll find in a Nissan Kicks, for example, but it does have paddle shifters down on the left, up on the right for shifting through the one single physical gear and the step shifts of the CVT. So that is nice because they are pretty responsive from my experience. And I find that it's a little annoying how Toyota separates the volume from the seek track buttons. I wish those were all on one side. Otherwise, we do have the D-pad and controls for that multi-information screen over here and the controls for the cruise control over here. Back here we have a refreshed 7-inch partially LCD instrument cluster. On the lower SE trim, this is a 4.2-inch screen with much less information, but here we have the most you can possibly get on a Corolla hatchback, and while it is visually pleasing at night, I would like to see more customizability to what you see and how information is displayed. For example, that speedometer in the center cannot be changed, and when you go through the different drive modes, visually things don't change too much. So we're currently in Eco, but if I toggle up into normal, you see the background changes to more of a magenta or purple color, and then as you go to sport, there is a more of a red horizon there, but the tachometer doesn't change. It doesn't change from a speedometer to a tachometer, nothing like that. The speedometer is always going to be that center digital readout there at the top of the center, and that's just fine with me, I guess, but I would prefer to see how Hyundai and Kia do it, where you can change drastically what you're looking at depending on the drive modes or independently of the drive modes. This view right here is all you're ever going to get. And as you cycle through the different views, you can see that most of the information that was provided last year is still here. It's just given a slight redesign in terms of how it is portrayed. I have to believe that there's a higher frame rate this time around because things move with much more fluidity than they did before, and visually that does look more premium. Getting the Corolla hatchback out on the road proves that it is actually a pretty grown-up experience compared to some of its competitors, and it definitely feels a little bit sportier than the sedan. In terms of 0 to 60 performance, keep in mind that I am at a pretty cold temperature location, so my speed may not have been as indicative of the actual performance of this car. It took me about 8.5 seconds to get from 0 to 60 miles per hour, and then 128 feet to get back from 60 to 0. Handling is also pretty decent in the Corolla too. It's got that short wheelbase that helps it be very good at turning in and parking and maneuvering around tight spaces. It is really a much more usable car than the Corolla sedan, which is not a big car by any means, but this one definitely feels a little bit more nimble, and again, a little bit tuned towards the sporty side. So if you throw it into a corner with its independent rear suspension, it definitely handles corners that have, ruts in the pavement or bumps a little bit better than something with a non-independent rear suspension like the regular Corolla sedan, a Mazda 3, a regular Hyundai Elantra. But if you get the hybrid version of the Corolla or the hybrid version of the Elantra, you're going to find independent suspensions in those, and this will feel a lot closer to those vehicles than the Mazda 3. I also find this car to be a little bit more refined feeling than the newest Honda Civic hatchback, which has a longer wheelbase and is a bigger car, but for some reason I just find this to be a little bit more sophisticated feeling than that car. And of course we have the new 2024 Impreza from Subaru coming. We'll have to wait and see how that handles compared to this, but compared to the outgoing one, I think this is still a little bit better. The ride quality is somewhere where I find this to be on par with the Mazda 3, which is my current benchmark in this class. The suspension tune is very refined, very polished, and again, very grown-up feeling. As you can see, I'm on this pretty rough road. It's a very cobblestoney road, and the Corolla handles it all very nicely. It basically muffles any sort of sharp jolts or any rough portions of pavement. It basically soaks it all up quite nicely. At 50 miles per hour, I measured cabin noise to be around 68 decibels. That's certainly not the quietest thing, and it's not as quiet as the Mazda 3, but it's still perfectly fine for this category, and honestly, I never once thought about how loud the noise was in here. You'll definitely hear some road noise and some wind noise at higher speed, but it's really not bad enough that it makes me think of older Hondas or even more recent Hondas, because that's one area Honda has never been perfectly good at. When it comes to fuel economy, I only managed 30.8 miles per gallon. It's nice to see that big 3 number up front. If you want better fuel economy out of a Corolla badged vehicle, you've got the Corolla Sedan Hybrid and the upcoming Corolla Cross Hybrid, both of which will get into the 40 mile per gallon range, and in some cases the 50s depending on how you treat them. Now it's time to summarize my findings on the 2023 Toyota Corolla hatchback XSE. Kicking things off, it's an attractive alternative to the less interesting looking sedan. You got two-tone paint options and of course that sportier hatchback look. You've also got a buttery smooth ride. The suspension is really nicely tuned on the hatchback and a really good CVT, though this is now the only transmission available for the Corolla hatchback. It is a really good one with a physical, or I guess a real first gear that gives around town driving a more natural feel. Also, the 169 horsepower you get out of the 2-liter 4-cylinder is a healthy amount of power for this size of vehicle, but if you want more, there is a GR Corolla for you. For 2023, there's some updated tech on the inside that is a welcome addition to the Corolla experience. However, a lot of those features, like the new Hey Toyota voice commands, are tied to a subscription service. So if you want features like that after a year of ownership, you're going to have to start paying up. Also, the back seat of the Corolla hatchback is definitely on the small side in this segment, not nearly as spacious as the newer Honda Civic hatchback. It's more in line with what you'd find in a Mazda 3 hatchback. Also, we've lost the manual transmission for the non-GR Corolla hatchbacks this year, so if you want a GR Corolla, that's the only way you're going to get a manual transmission in any Corolla for 2023. And finally, a personal gripe, no sunroof is available at any trim level. When it comes to competition, the Corolla is set up very well to compete with the players you see on your screen, which are the Honda Civic hatchback, the Mazda 3 hatchback, and the Subaru Impreza, which is now only a hatchback. There is no more sedan version of the Impreza. That Impreza does have a slightly lower starting price than the Corolla hatchback at $24,085. Add 15 more to that to get to the base price of the Corolla hatchback. But that Impreza has a pretty narrow window of pricing, as does the regular Corolla hatchback. However, if you see that red dot over there on the right, that is the price of a fully loaded GR Corolla, $52,640, and you're actually getting less with that car in terms of flexibility and capability, because you lose the back seat and you get a much harsher suspension setup. So that's a very niche car for people who are going to take that to the track. But I just wanted to show you what you can spend on a Corolla hatchback in 2023. And same goes for the Honda Civic hatchback, because you can get that in the form of the Civic Type R. That will max out at $44,845, but a regular Civic is going to start a little bit more than the Corolla hatchback at $26,945. Its pricing range caps off at the regular level at $32,500, but there's no all-wheel drive available on any Civic hatchback, just like there's no available all-wheel drive on the regular Corolla, but that GR Corolla does give you all-wheel drive. Then the Mazda 3 has a shockingly low starting price. It's actually much closer to the Corolla than the Civic, but I think you're getting a more luxurious experience out of the Mazda 3. But as you can see, though there isn't a hot hatch version, there is a warm hatch version in the form of the turbo all-wheel drive models, the Premium Plus trim level. I drove one last year. That will cap out at $37,255, but you are getting a near luxury experience with that car compared to a fully loaded Corolla or Civic hatchback, which aren't nearly as fancy feeling when you're behind the wheel. And finally, that Subaru Impreza, it's all new for 2024. We haven't driven it yet, but from what we can tell, it'll be a pretty solid competitor in terms of value and the equipment you'll get on it. But right now, Subaru says the top price for an Impreza will be about $28,975. There could be an ability to add more features or packages on. We don't know the full breakdown of pricing yet for the Impreza, but that's around what Subaru is saying it'll cap at for now. And the Subaru, of course, comes with standard all-wheel drive. So actually, in this segment, if you want all-wheel drive, the cheapest option is going to be that Impreza at $24,085. If it were my money in this segment, even though it doesn't have an independent rear suspension, I would still pick the Mazda 3 hatchback. It just gives you an elevated driving experience, or an elevated cabin experience, compared to these other models, which feel more like the economy cars that they are. The Mazda just feels a little bit fancier, and if you can get one at the right price, you could still be right around the same as a fully loaded Civic, and you're getting a nicer car. But in terms of dynamics, you might be able to toss a Corolla or a Civic hatchback into the corners a little bit quicker than the Mazda because of that suspension setup. But for typical driving, for how you're going to drive the cars 99% of the time, the Mazda 3 is an excellent drive, but the Corolla really puts up a really great fight. Let me know what you think about all of that in the comment section below. Make sure to like this video if you're a fan of hatchbacks over sedans. Subscribe if you love detailed car reviews, and make sure to follow us also on the Auto Buyer's Guide podcast channel, the EV Buyer's Guide channel, the Alex on Auto's website for the written reviews, and all of our social media accounts like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And you can find me over at Instagram at Brian Ross Skelly. Until I see you next time, thank you so much for watching. Take care.